Your retirement savings are locked in a cage until you're 59 and a half years old. Pull money out early, and the IRS takes a 10% penalty on top of your regular taxes. But there's a door in that cage that opens at 55. Not 56, not 54 and a half, 55. And most people walk right past it because nobody told them it existed, or they were too scared to use it, or their financial advisor makes more money if they stay at their job for another decade. Here's what nobody tells you about early retirement. The math says wait, the tax code says go, and your body? Your body has an opinion too, but we don't factor that into spreadsheets. I'm going to walk you through exactly how the Rule of 55 works, why the IRS created this weird exception in the first place, and the specific conditions where using it makes you richer than waiting. I'll show you the numbers, the psychological traps, and the one mistake that turns this tool into a disaster. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link in the description. So here's the central idea. Think of your retirement money as sitting in 3 different rooms. Room 1 is your taxable brokerage account. You can access this anytime, but you already paid taxes on the contributions, and you'll pay capital gains when you sell. Room 2 is your Roth IRA. Tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals, but you can't touch the earnings without penalty until 59 and a half. Room 3 is your 401k. This is where most of your money probably lives. You never paid taxes on it going in, it grew tax deferred, and when you pull it out, Uncle Sam wants his cut plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty if you're under 59 and a half. The Rule of 55 is a side door in Room 3. It only opens under very specific conditions, and if you don't meet all of them, you're stuck paying that penalty anyway. Here's the first condition. You have to leave your job in the year you turn 55 or later, not 54. Not I'm turning 55 next month. The IRS doesn't care if you quit, retire, or get laid off, but you have to separate from that employer during or after the calendar year you hit 55. If you leave at 54 in 11 months, you just locked yourself out. Second condition. The money has to stay in your employer's 401k plan. This is where people mess up. You leave your job, some guy at Fidelity calls you and says, hey, want to roll this into an IRA? We have better fund options. You say yes because it sounds smart. Congratulations. You just destroyed your ability to use the Rule of 55. The second that money moves into an IRA, the 10% penalty comes back until you're 59 and a half. There's a different rule for IRAs called 72T, substantially equal periodic payments, but that's a straitjacket. You commit to a fixed withdrawal schedule for at least 5 years, you can't change your mind, and if you mess it up, the IRS backtracks the penalty to day one. The Rule of 55 is flexible. 72T is not. Third condition. Not every employer plan allows this. Legally, they can. But some plans are written in a way that says, nope, you have to be 59 and a half no matter what. You have to check with your plan administrator before you make any moves. I've seen people quit their jobs assuming this would work, only to find out their plan doesn't allow penalty-free withdrawals at 55. Now they're unemployed with no access to their savings. Fourth condition, and this one trips people up. The Rule of 55 only applies to your current employer's 401k. If you have old 401ks sitting at previous jobs, those don't qualify. However, some plans let you roll old 401ks into your current plan before you leave. If you want to consolidate everything and maximize your accessible funds, you have to do that rollover before you separate from your current employer. Once you quit, that door closes. Now you're asking yourself, okay, so I can access my 401k at 55 without a penalty. Why does that matter? Why not just wait until 59 and a half like everyone else? Because waiting has a cost, and it's not the cost you think it is. Here's a story. I know a guy who worked in logistics for a freight company. Let me call him Rick. Rick turned 55 in 2022. He had about $800,000 in his 401k. His plan was to work until 62, file for Social Security, then retire. Standard playbook. But Rick's job was destroying him. He was working 60-hour weeks, constant travel, brutal stress. His doctor told him his blood pressure was dangerous. His wife told him he was missing his kids' lives. His body was telling him to stop. Rick ran the numbers. If he worked 7 more years, his 401k might grow to $1.2 million, assuming 6% average returns. That extra $400,000 felt like the responsible move. So he kept working. At 57, Rick had a heart attack. Not fatal, but severe enough that he couldn't travel anymore. The company moved him to a desk role with a 20% pay cut. Now he's making less, still stressed, and his health didn't recover the way he hoped. He finally retired at 59 with about 950,000 in his 401k, less than he projected, and 2 years of his life he's never getting back. The trade-off isn't money versus more money. It's money now versus money later, and time is the variable nobody prices correctly. There's this concept called the retirement spending smile. Early in retirement, people spend more, they travel, they take up hobbies, they have energy. This phase is called the go-go years, roughly from 60 to 75. Then spending drops during the slow-go years, 70s to early 80s. Then it spikes again in the no-go years because of healthcare costs, long-term care, all the stuff that happens when your body breaks down. The shape on a graph looks like a smile. Here's the problem. Most people optimize their retirement plan for the no-go years. They're so worried about running out of money at 85 that they sacrifice the go-go years when they actually have the energy to enjoy the wealth they built. They work until 65, finally retire, and then they're too tired to do the things they saved for. The rule of 55 flips that logic. It says, what if you front-loaded your retirement? What if you took the go-go years seriously? Let's talk about the psychology of this decision, because this is where people get stuck. There are two types of regret: regret of action and regret of inaction. Regret of action is when you do something and it goes wrong. You retire early, the market crashes, you run out of money. That's painful, and it's visible. Everyone can see you messed up. Regret of inaction is when you don't do something and you miss the opportunity. You don't retire early, you keep working, and then you're 70 and you realize you never took that trip to Japan, never spent time with your grandkids, never built the workshop you always wanted. That regret is quieter, but it's permanent. Here's the thing. Our brains are wired to avoid regret of action way more than regret of inaction. We'd rather do nothing and miss out than do something and fail publicly. That's why people stay in jobs they hate. It's why they don't retire early even when the numbers work. The fear of running out of money is louder than the fear of running out of time. But now you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Time matters, health matters. But what if I actually do run out of money? Fair question. Let's run a scenario. You're 55. You have $750,000 in your 401k. You want to retire now and live on $45,000 a year until Social Security kicks in at 67? That's 12 years of withdrawals. 12 times 45,000 is $540,000. Sounds doable, right? You've got 750,000, you only need 540,000, you're good. Wrong. First, inflation. 45,000 today is not 45,000 in 12 years. At 3% inflation, which is the historical average, 45,000 in year 12 is actually 64,000 in purchasing power. Your withdrawals need to increase every year just to maintain the same lifestyle. Second, taxes. Every dollar you pull from your 401k is taxed as ordinary income. If you're withdrawing 45,000 and you're married filing jointly, you're in the 12% federal bracket. Add state taxes, let's say another 5%. You're paying $7,650 in taxes, so your actual net is $37,350. You need to withdraw more to get the $45,000 you actually want to spend. Third, market volatility. That $750,000 isn't sitting in cash. It's invested. Some years it grows 10%, some years it drops 15%. If you retire in 2008 and start pulling money while the market is crashing, you're selling shares at a loss, locking in those losses, and shrinking your principal faster than if you retired in 2017 when the market was climbing. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's the biggest danger in early retirement. You can have the same average return over 12 years, but if the bad years happen early, you're in trouble. So here's the move most people miss. You don't retire at 55 with only your 401k. You retire with a 3-bucket strategy. Bucket 1 is your taxable brokerage account. This is money you already paid taxes on. You can sell from this account first, and you'll only pay long-term capital gains, which is 0% if your taxable income is under $94,000 for married couples. This is your buffer for the first couple years. Bucket 2 is your 401k. You use the rule of 55 to access this penalty-free, but you're strategic. In low-income years, you withdraw just enough to stay in the 12% tax bracket. You're filling the bracket, not overflowing it. If you need more money, you sell from your brokerage account. Bucket 3 is Roth conversions. This is the part nobody talks about. Between 55 and 67, before Social Security starts, you have 12 years of potentially low-income years. Low income means low tax brackets. This is your window to convert chunks of your 401k into a Roth IRA. You pay taxes now at 12% instead of 22 or 24% later when Social Security and required minimum distributions push you into higher brackets. You're not converting everything at once, you're converting just enough each year to fill the lower brackets without spilling into the next one. Let me give you real numbers. You and your spouse retire at 55. Your taxable income from 401k withdrawals and part-time work is $60,000. The 12% bracket for married couples tops out at $94,300. You have $34,300 of room left in that bracket. You convert $34,000 from your 401k to a Roth. You pay 12% tax on it now, $4,116, and that money grows tax-free forever. When you're 75 and in the 24% bracket, you just saved yourself $8,184 in future taxes on that $34,000, not counting the growth. Multiply that by 12 years of conversions, and you're shifting hundreds of thousands of dollars from tax-deferred to tax-free while you're in the lowest brackets of your life. But here's the catch. If you're pulling too much from your 401k to live on, you don't have room to do these conversions. Your ordinary income fills the bracket, and now you're stuck. That's why the taxable brokerage account matters. It gives you flexibility. You can pull living expenses from the brokerage, keep your taxable income low, and maximize Roth conversions. This is the game. You're not just accessing your money early, you're repositioning it for decades of tax-free growth. Now, here's the kicker. The Rule of 55 doesn't force you to withdraw a specific amount. It's not like required minimum distributions at 73. You can take out $10,000 one year, $60,000 the next, zero the year after. It's a tool, not a mandate. You're not locked into anything. And you don't have to never work again. You leave your job at 55, you take a year off, you travel, you reset. Then maybe you pick up part-time consulting, 20 hours a week, $30,000 a year. That income covers some expenses, reduces your 401k withdrawals, gives you more room for Roth conversions, and keeps you semi-engaged without the soul-crushing stress of your old job. The Rule of 55 isn't all or nothing, it's a bridge. Here's the part where I tell you what nobody else will. The financial services industry does not want you to retire early. They don't want you to use the Rule of 55. You know why? Because their revenue model depends on assets under management. The longer your money sits in their accounts, the more fees they collect. If you retire at 55 and start drawing down your 401k, their AUM drops. They make less money. So when you ask your advisor, should I retire early? Guess what they say? Oh, you should probably work a few more years, just to be safe, build that cushion. To be fair, some of that advice is genuinely risk-averse and well-meaning, but some of it is incentive-driven. They get paid on the size of your portfolio, not on the quality of your life. And your employer? They definitely don't want you using the Rule of 55. You're probably one of their most experienced, productive employees. Replacing you is expensive. Training someone new takes years. If you leave at 55, they lose institutional knowledge. So when you mention early retirement, your boss says, "You sure? What about your health care? What about your pension? You're so close to full vesting." They're not wrong, but they're not neutral either. Let's talk about health care, because this is the legitimate scary part. You leave your job at 55, you lose your employer health insurance. You're not eligible for Medicare until 65. That's 10 years where you're on your own. Cobra lets you keep your employer plan for 18 months, but you're paying the full premium, which could be $1,500 to $2,000 a month for a family. After that, you're buying insurance on the Affordable Care Act exchange. Here's the move. If your income is low enough, ACA subsidies are huge. A married couple making $60,000 a year qualifies for significant premium tax credits. Your health insurance might cost $500 a month instead of $2,000. But if you're pulling $100,000 from your 401k to live large, your income is too high, subsidies disappear, and you're paying full freight. This is why the three-bucket strategy matters. You control your taxable income. You pull from your brokerage account, which doesn't count as income the same way. You keep your 401k withdrawals low enough to qualify for subsidies. You're gaming the system legally using the same rules that lawmakers designed to help lower-income people, except you're not lower income, you're just strategically lower income on paper. People think early retirement is for the rich. It's not. It's for the strategic. I know people with $3 million who are terrified to retire. I know people with $600,000 who pulled it off at 56. The difference isn't the account balance, it's the plan. Here's another thing. You think the problem is not having enough money. The actual problem is not knowing how much is enough. I've watched people delay retirement because they didn't hit some arbitrary number they read in a blog post. 2 million, 3 million, whatever. But they never asked, how much do I actually need to spend per year to be happy? They never tracked their expenses. They never built a real budget. So they're aiming at a target they can't define, and they'll never hit it because it doesn't exist. You want to retire early? Start tracking every dollar you spend right now, not to be cheap, to know your number. If you realize you're happy spending $50,000 a year and you have $800,000 in your 401k, the math might work. But if you're spending $90,000 and you don't even know it, you're going to retire and panic 6 months in. I spent 20 plus years running my own business. I was surrounded by accountants and fiscal lawyers who taught me something critical. Rich people don't retire. They just shift from earning money to managing money. They stay engaged, but on their terms. That's the model. The rule of 55 gives you the option to shift at 55 instead of 65. You're not checking out, you're recalibrating. Maybe you start a small business. Maybe you consult. Maybe you do nothing for 2 years and then get bored and pick up a part-time gig. The point is, you have options, but only if you set it up correctly. Now, let's be clear. This is not financial advice. I'm not your advisor. I'm a guy who reads the tax code and explains how the system actually works. But if you're approaching 55, here are 3 things you need to do right now. 1. Call your HR department or your 401k plan administrator. Ask them 2 questions. Does your plan allow penalty-free withdrawals at 55? And does your plan allow you to roll old 401ks into your current plan? Get those answers in writing. Don't assume, verify. 2. Run your numbers with real expenses, real tax brackets, and real healthcare costs. Don't use some online calculator that assumes 7% returns forever. Model a bad sequence of returns. Model a year where the market drops 25% right when you retire. If your plan survives that, you're good. If it doesn't, adjust. 3. Open a taxable brokerage account now if you don't have one. Start moving money into it. You want at least 2 years of expenses in there before you retire. This is your buffer, your flexibility, your Roth conversion enabler. It's the most underrated part of the strategy. Here's the cynical truth. The system is designed to keep you working longer than you need to. Social Security full retirement age keeps creeping up. Required minimum distributions keep getting delayed. The message is, work longer, die sooner, leave more in the system. The rule of 55 is one of the few tools in the tax code that works in your favor. It's not a loophole. It's a legitimate provision, but most people don't use it because they don't know it exists, or they're too scared, or someone with a conflict of interest talked them out of it. You can always make more money, you can't make more time, and you can't buy back your 50s. Don't work for money, own the companies that do.